Just coming back a little bit to the student placements and the incubators, we have a question from Andrew via Skype. He's saying, how long will placements last, and is it feasible to take a break or a sabbatical from work to go into a student placement? Is that something we'd consider?
Going through like the process of negotiation and discussion with the studios, my current kind of feeling is that placements should be 3 or 6 months. 3 months is about the bare minimum that the studios felt that somebody could come in, take a seat, learn the regime, understand the workflow and actually contribute. 6 months is a little more ideal for them, so somebody gets a little bit kind of more time to learn it and then do a little bit more actually on the product. So I would say typically we're going to be looking at 3 to 6 months. If somebody wanted a shorter placement than that for their own personal reasons or to suit their own circumstances, it's not impossible. It's just about discussing it with the studios and see what we can come up with. But just again, you know, Tony and I are working on something in the background. So if placements just defeat somebody because of their own personal circumstances and we can't find a way of getting a slot or some involvement, we've got something coming along which we hopefully will fill that gap.
Okay. I mean, to build on that, and I'm sure John will agree, that not only has the student have to have the skill set and the ability to deliver value to the studio when they arrive, or the potential to deliver the day they arrive, they also have the ability to adapt their methodology, their way of developing products to the way that the studio does it, and that's why it can take anything up to you know, 2-3 months to bring that value in. You're going to require a lot of mentoring to start with. How do you do the version control software? What is the method of just putting new processes through, etc., etc. This is actually going to take time and take cost away from the studio. And you know, anything much less than 3 months really is going to be difficult for you to bring 3 months worth of value back to the studio if you've spent the first month learning how to work within the studio.
I do think the comfort zone of being in the educational framework is definitely broken up in the studio.
Yeah.
You know, it's like suddenly being chucked on a shop floor in the garage and you've got to mend a car.
Yeah.
You have got to be, you know, no one's going to risk you messing up when someone's going to drive that car out of your shop front. And that's really kind of where where you're going to be going. You're going to go from theoretical and fantasy idea of working in the games industry to really being there at the coalface. And there is a big difference in the experience, and it normally takes everyone a while to adapt. And some people don't like it. They don't like the pressure. They don't like the scrutinisation suddenly. That maybe someone's been softer on you when you were in education.
I mean, it's a fantastic...
sorry, Tony, I've got a great question though, again via Skype. How much mentoring support are graduates and students, either on the student placement scheme or in the incubator scheme, going to get from the T2G mentors? Are we just going to sort of say, there's your incubator or there's your student placement, now you go and work with these guys and I'll see you in 6 months, or are we going to talk to them and support them?
Incubators is specifically designed to utilise people in the industry who have got the right background and mentality for dealing with a new startup team. So we're talking about, you know, the John Hares of this world who have got the background, the patience and the ability to sit with somebody and who doesn't see as clearly as you do. So, you know, we're looking to wrap, if you like, a bunch of people around an incubator. So people like myself and Tony on a production front, people like yourself on a business front, people like John on a design front. So there should be a ring of mentors around each particular incubator that give them the right advice on the right day from the right person with the right background. With student placements, it's going to vary depending on somebody's previous experience. If somebody has work experience, if you're 28 and you've done 5 years worth of web development, I don't think that we need to do too much about what it's like to be in work. We need to cover a few things. You know, game studios tend to have like a funny tempo, and the regime sometimes isn't quite as obvious as it might be in another kind of company. So we'll need to cover those bases. But you know, students will have, you know, somebody on the end of a phone if they've got to ask a question. There'll be a placement officer, a placement, you know, somebody responsible for checking up on placements.
Yep.
And studios need to allocate somebody. We need to see a studio clearly nominate somebody as the student mentor once we've placed those students.
Tony, do you, DR Studios are looking for student placements. When that student turns up, do you sit him in a corner and give him a project, or do you work with him?
No, we don't sit them in a corner and give them a project. We've worked with quite a lot of students coming in, everything from work experience for the local secondary school through to university graduates. So we're well set up for working with work placement students. And typically what would happen is they would come into the studio, they'd have an induction week, fortnight, where they'd be brought up to speed on our way of working, the system that they're working with, the software that they're working with, which should be very similar to the course materials that they've already been given. And then they'd be gradually, as John said earlier, gradually brought into the project, so that they would be a value add to the project to start with, doing peripheral stuff, and gradually brought closer and closer to the critical pipeline. They'd be assigned a mentor, which would be one of the department experts, the subject matter experts, either from art or code or design, depending on what they're looking to do. And they would work very much hand in glove with that person on a daily basis. And we would expect them within the first 3 to 4 weeks to actually start producing assets of their own under that guidance. And gradually the how do I do this type questions would start to disappear, and it'd be more into what do you want to do, what do I need to achieve whilst I'm doing this, and that's how they would work with us.
It's also important to point out these guys who are going to be mentors, it's not their job to be a mentor.
Correct.
They are going to be a professional graphics artist or a professional programmer, a professional designer or producer who will allocate a proportion of their time to overseeing your work, but it's got to fit in with their schedule, because their schedule is what's getting the bread and butter into the company. So that's the kind of environment. It's not an educational environment in that sense. There's someone making sure nothing goes too wrong or you don't move too far away from where you should be, but you're going to be invited into the workplace rather than the workplace be invited into your educational world. That's kind of the balance of the way it works.
I think that answers Gary's question as well about what the duties were. I'm going to move into a slightly broader set of topics now for the games industry. We've got a bunch of questions that aren't necessarily related to the incubator or the placement schemes, but are much more games industry related questions. So if those of you that are hammering away on your keyboards via Skype can ask some broader market questions now, that would be really appreciated. So I've got some questions here that are broad industry questions. Can
I just jump back to something John just said before we dive into the next question? It's very important for the mindset of the student, whether they're on incubator or work placement, to realise that they're there to do work. They're not there to be taught. They will learn by doing that work. But it's not an easy option. They're not going to be there in like a classroom environment and just be taught and walk out with something. They're there. In fact, it's quite hard because they're going to have to graft at doing what they're doing and learn at the same time.
Again, that's a nice segue there, actually. So we've got a question that's a broader question from Edmund Ungai, and he's saying he's having trouble getting interviews. So he's on our games artist course, I believe.
Okay.
So he couldn't have been on it very long, and he's applying for positions already, and he's saying he's having problems getting to interview. What are the main things that companies and development studios are looking for at the moment, and what should he be looking to get into his CV and into his portfolio? And one more question to bolt onto that. Do you think he should be applying for roles at this point in his course?
Without knowing his particulars, I can't answer in great detail, but I would guess from my knowledge of the art course, he can't be on it for very long. I would say the short answer is no, he shouldn't be applying at this point. I'm looking for the students to start thinking about applying for positions where they're on the third section of the course. And the reason I say the third section is that the way the courses are broken down, section 1 is all about facts. It's all about getting the knowledge that you need to do the job. Section 2 is where you start on your portfolio work, and that's where you start to understand and prove understanding of the tools and the skills that you have. But section 3 is where the portfolio work is really done, and this is the most important part of the course, portfolio work, because this is proof of ability. So until you have proof of ability, it's not surprising that he's not getting traction when applying for interviews.
I think possibly what's happening is there's probably maybe a little bit of lack of understanding about what happens internally. So a CV comes in, and what recruiters call the sift happens, Now, if we're an IT company, database company, they're sifting CVs. In games companies, we're sifting the portfolio. We only go and look at the CV when we like the look of the portfolio, right? So the sifting is the other way around. You need to understand that we're not going to go and look at the CV first and then go and find the portfolio. We're going to sift the CVs and go, wow, look at that, then go and find the CV.
Yes.
It's the other way around, right?
And Edmund here is saying, what's the main thing companies are looking for? We're looking at a CV and an application. You're saying they're
portfolio.
not looking
No,
at
they're not.
an application, they're looking at the portfolio
CV is
first.
second, portfolio is first.
I think there's another point which is to do with understanding the rhythm of the game development industry. There's certain seasons to it. So what happens is, for example, around about March, April is when you get the publishing companies that we normally get paid from as developers. Then they're getting to their point where they're end of their financial year, the beginning of a new one. So it often means new money's coming in either in the March or the April, depending on the way they want to swing it. We then normally have a period around about June, July, August, where we're hammering to get stuff finished for Christmas because we've got long leading periods, and that's a really bad time to apply because no one's got any time to deal with you. And then you've got Christmas when games come out and people will start to, probably from about September, October, November, they'll start to consider new concepts, which might not be a bad time. So I think understanding the rhythm of the industry will help a lot because most of us have only got 2 or 3 projects on the go at once, which are very big. And if we're in the middle of those and we don't need, say, artists at the moment because the project doesn't need it at that time, it doesn't matter how good you are, your CV is just coming in at the wrong time. So don't be downhearted if you get a rejection. Often it's because the position's not there at that for whatever reason.
So you're saying there's a cyclical nature to applying, and there's the good time to apply, and there's a bad time. The bad time being when they're trying to final and complete projects. The good time being when they're quiet. When is that good time?
I would say the good. Well, from our point of view as developers, if we're looking for a new project, often the best time to get something set up is around April or May, because that's when the new money's come in from the funders into the publishers. They come through, and then that means you'll be establishing your team around April or May. So by May, June, you'll be looking to bolster that team, and it's when the team's being bolstered that students are likely to get the positions to come in. It's going to be around that May, June period, and then from July to August, you've got with the Nintendo format, you're always finishing stuff off. There's not any time to do anything. And you don't need students because you need someone who knows what they're doing to get the job, to get it in a box quick. And then you've got that period sort of like after the Christmas rush has gone, where there's another second window of opportunity, I'd say.
I mean, if I can go back to the particular question, remember each one of the courses, there's a framework of which the academic content of the course is laid out, and each lesson is based upon what has been taught on the previous lessons. So by trying to short circuit that, by leaving the course early, you're going to miss out a lot of the back end value. So no, without knowing the particulars of the student, I applaud his enthusiasm, but I would question whether he's ready to start applying, and that's probably why he's not getting the traction. He hasn't got a value that he can demonstrate within his portfolio, and he's going to be missing huge sections of knowledge and tuition by not having done those tail end courses.